Chapter 28 of A Passage to India by E. M. Forster. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 28. Dead she was, committed to the deep while still on the southward track, for the boats from Bombay cannot point towards Europe until Arabia has been rounded. She was further in the tropics than ever achieved while on shore, when the sun touched her for the last time, and her body was lowered into yet another India, the Indian Ocean. She left behind her sore discomfort, for a death gives a ship a bad name. Who was this Mrs. Moore? When Aden was reached, Lady Mellanby cabled, wrote, did all that was kind, but the wife of a lieutenant governor does not bargain for such an experience, and she repeated, "I had only seen the poor creature for a few hours when she was taken ill. Really, this has been needlessly distressing. It spoils one's homecoming." A ghost followed the ship up the Red Sea, but failed to enter the Mediterranean. Somewhere about Suez there is always a social change. The arrangements of Asia weaken, and those of Europe begin to be felt, and during the transition Mrs. Moore was shaken off. At Port Said the grey, blustery north began. The weather was so cold and bracing that the passengers felt it must have broken in the land they had left, but it became hotter steadily there, in accordance with its usual law. The death took subtler and more lasting shapes in Chandrapur. A legend sprang up that an Englishman had killed his mother for trying to save an Indian's life, and there was just enough truth in this to cause annoyance to the authorities. Sometimes it was a cow that had been killed, or a crocodile with the tusks of a boar had crawled out of the Ganges. Nonsense of this type is more difficult to combat than a solid lie. It hides in rubbish heaps, and moves when no one is looking. At one period, 2 distinct tombs containing Miss S. Moore's remains were reported, one by the tannery, the other up near the goods station. Mr. McBride visited them both and saw signs of the beginning of a cult, earthenware saucers, and so on. Being an experienced official, he did nothing to irritate it, and after a week or so the rash died down. "There's propaganda behind all this," he said, forgetting that 100 years ago, when Europeans still made their home in the countryside and appealed to its imagination, they occasionally became local demons after death. Not a whole god, perhaps, but part of one, adding an epithet or gesture to what already existed, just as the gods contribute to the great gods, and they to the philosophic Brahm. Ronnie reminded himself that his mother had left India at her own wish, but his conscience was not clear. He had behaved badly to her, and he had either to repent, which involved a mental overturn, or to persist in unkindness towards her. He chose the latter course. How tiresome she had been with her patronage of Aziz! What a bad influence upon Adela! And now she still gave trouble with ridiculous tombs, mixing herself up with natives. She could not help it, of course, but she had attempted similar exasperating expeditions in her lifetime, and he reckoned it against her. The young man had much to worry him: the heat, the local tension, the approaching visit of the lieutenant governor, the problems of Adela, and threading them all together into a grotesque garland were these Indianizations of Mrs. Moore. What does happen to one's mother when she dies? Presumably she goes to heaven. Anyhow, she clears out. Ronnie's religion was of the sterilized public school brand, which never goes bad, even in the tropics. Whenever he entered mosque, cave, or temple, he retained the spiritual outlook of the fifth form and condemned as weakening any attempt to understand them. Pulling himself together, he dismissed the matter from his mind. In due time, he and his half-brother and sister would put up a tablet to her in the Northamptonshire church where she had worshipped, recording the dates of her birth and death, and the fact that she had been buried at sea. This would be sufficient. And Adela, she would have to depart too. He hoped she would have made the suggestion herself ere now. He really could not marry her. It would mean the end of his career. Poor, lamentable Adela. She remained at Government College, by Fielding's courtesy. Unsuitable and humiliating, but no one would receive her at the civil station. He postponed all private talk until the award against her was decided. Aziz was suing her for damages in the sub-judge's court. Then he would ask her to release him. She had killed his love, and it had never been very robust. They would never have achieved betrothal but for the accident to the Nawab Bahadur's car. She belonged to the callow academic period of his life, which he had outgrown. Grasmere, serious talks and walks, that sort of thing. End of chapter 28.